Admiral Taeho paused, letting tension build in the council chamber. The representatives waited silently for him to continue his story. Communications specialist Nari had been scanning constantly with a modified device she built from parts of both our ships, Taeho finally said. She discovered something none of our equipment had detected, an underground tunnel system running through the mountains. The hologram showed a network of tunnels beneath the rocky surface. The tunnels appeared to be artificial, perhaps built by an ancient civilization that once lived on the moon. They were deep enough to shield us from the eruption, and could potentially lead us away from the Nexar forces. A representative with translucent skin raised a delicate hand. How did the human detect what your advanced equipment could not? An excellent question, Taeho nodded. Nari had modified her scanner to look specifically for air pockets and temperature differences. She wasn't following standard search protocols. She was experimenting, trying different approaches. Our warriors were trained to use equipment in specific, proven ways. The humans constantly adjusted and improvised. The hologram showed the entrance to the tunnels, a narrow opening in the rock face partially hidden by fallen stones. We had little choice. The volcanic activity was growing worse. The Nexar would reach us within hours. We entered the tunnels, helping Setak through the narrow opening. The image shifted to show the dark interior of the tunnels, lit only by emergency lights. The walls were smooth, carved with symbols none of them recognized. The tunnels were safer than the surface, but they presented new dangers. Some passages had collapsed. The air was stale but breathable with our filters, and we had no map. We were moving blind, hoping to find an exit on the other side of the mountain range. Taeho's expression grew more serious. What we didn't know was that the Nexar had detected the tunnel entrance too. They sent a squad in after us. The council chamber filled with murmurs of concern. We had been moving through the tunnels for about 3 hours when our rear sensors detected movement behind us. The Nexar were closing fast. We increased our pace, but with an injured warrior we couldn't move quickly enough. The hologram showed the group reaching a large chamber where multiple tunnels converged. The ceiling was high, supported by carved columns. There were 7 different passages leading out. We faced a choice, Taeho said. Which tunnel to take? We had no way of knowing which might lead to safety, and the Nexar were getting closer. He looked around at the council members. This is where I witnessed the most surprising human trait of all, their battle intelligence. The Grand Speaker tilted his head. Battle intelligence? I was under the impression humans had limited military technology. Technology? Yes, Taeho agreed. But their tactical thinking? He shook his head, slightly. Security Officer Minjae asked me detailed questions about Nexar tracking methods, communication systems, and standard combat formations. These were questions a seasoned military strategist would ask. The hologram showed Minjae drawing diagrams, in the dust on the chamber floor, discussing quietly with Captain Jiwoo. Within minutes they had developed a plan. We would split into 2 groups. My warriors and I would take the injured Setak through the most promising tunnel. The humans would create diversions in the other tunnels to confuse the Nexar and draw them away from us. Several council members stirred uncomfortably. You left those primitive humans to face the Nexar alone? Asked the Krell representative disapprovingly. I had the same reaction, Taeho admitted. I refused the plan at first. The humans had no armor, limited weapons, and no experience fighting. Nexar, it seemed like suicide, but Captain Jiwoo was persuasive. The hologram showed Jiwoo speaking intensely to Taeho, pointing at the tunnels, then at the injured Setak. She said, "You need to get your injured to safety. We can move faster alone and we're good at hiding, trust us." Taeho's voice softened. She also said something I will never forget. Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We're very, very good at it. The council chamber was completely silent now. Reluctantly, I agreed to their plan. My warriors and I took Setak through the central tunnel. The humans split up and entered the other passages. The hologram showed what happened next, the humans working with astonishing speed and coordination. Engineer Dong-hyun created small devices from parts in his pack and placed them in different tunnels. Nari set up communication relays. Min-jae prepared traps using local materials. Junho gave everyone a quick medical check and distributed stimulants from their medical supplies. Captain Ji-woo coordinated it all. They moved like they had rehearsed this many times, Taeho said. Each knew exactly what to do with minimal instruction. Within 20 minutes, they had prepared and were moving into position. The image showed the humans disappearing into different tunnels just as the first Nexar soldiers entered the large chamber. What the humans had created was... Taeho searched for the right word. Chaos. The hologram displayed the scene that followed. Small explosions echoed from different tunnels. Strange sounds played over hidden speakers. Heat signatures appeared and disappeared. The Nexar squad split up following the false trails. The Nexar military prides itself on discipline and direct action, Taeho explained. They are powerful fighters but rigid in their tactics. The humans exploited this. They created patterns that made no sense. They violated basic military principles. They used noise and light and heat in ways that confused the Nexar sensors. The images showed Nexar soldiers moving deeper into empty tunnels, following false leads. One by one, the Nexar soldiers were separated, confused, and then... Taeho paused. The hologram showed Security Officer Min-jae setting a trap, a simple device that caused a tunnel roof to collapse on 3 Nexar soldiers. The humans used the environment as a weapon. They didn't try to overpower the Nexar directly. That would have been impossible. Instead, they tricked them into dangerous areas. They collapsed passages behind them. They created dead ends where none had existed before. The council watched as the humans, working separately but in perfect coordination, systematically eliminated the Nexar threat. In under 2 hours, a squad of 15 elite Nexar soldiers had been reduced to 3. Taeho said, and those 3 were now moving cautiously, afraid of every shadow. A representative known for their military background spoke up. This is hard to believe, Admiral. No untrained species could defeat Nexar special forces, regardless of tactics. Would have said the same. Taeho nodded. Until I reviewed the humans' histories later. What Ji-woo told me was true. Humans have been fighting each other constantly throughout their history. They developed something they call asymmetric warfare, the art of fighting against superior forces. He looked around the chamber. While we evolved toward direct confrontation and honorable combat, humans mastered deception, misdirection, and psychological warfare. They don't fight fair. They fight to win, using whatever means necessary. The hologram showed my warriors, and I reaching an exit from the tunnels. We emerged on the far side of the mountain range, away from the volcanic activity. Our emergency beacon was now working at full power. Rescue would come soon. But we still faced a problem. Taeho continued. The humans were scattered through the tunnel system. The remaining Nexar soldiers were hunting them, and more Nexar forces were landing on the surface. Taeho's expression showed ancient worry. I wanted to go back for them, but Satak's condition was worsening. I had to make a choice and stay with my injured warrior or return to find the humans. The council chamber was so quiet that even the smallest movements seemed loud. Before I could decide, my communication device activated. It was Captain Ji-woo. She and the other humans had regrouped. They had evaded the remaining Nexar in the tunnels and found another exit. But they faced a new problem. They were now being hunted by a full Nexar platoon on the surface. The hologram showed the 5 humans hiding in a rocky outcrop. Nexar search parties moved in the distance, closing in on their position. Ji-woo told me not to come for them. She said rescue was coming for us and that was what mattered. Then she said they had a plan to deal with the Nexar. Taeho shook his head slightly. When she told me what they intended to do, I thought they had gone mad from stress. Their plan had virtually no chance of success. Our military simulations would have calculated it at less than 1% probability. He looked up at the council, his eyes intense. But there was something in Captain Ji-woo's voice that made me believe they might actually succeed. The council chamber remained silent as Admiral Taeho began his story. His voice carried clearly through the large room. 50 cycles ago, our ship and the human vessel crashed on a moon called Dreok 7. It was not a good place to be stranded. The air was toxic. The gravity was stronger than most habitable worlds. The days were scorching hot and the nights freezing cold. Dangerous creatures lived there, and the Nexar rebels were coming for us. Taiho activated his device again. A hologram appeared showing a barren landscape with purple-tinged rocks and a sky the color of rust. 2 damaged ships lay half-buried in the ground, smoke rising from their broken hulls. Our ship's captain died in the crash, along with half our crew. I was the highest-ranking officer left. Of the 20 humans on their ship, only 5 survived. The hologram shifted to show 5 figures in simple spacesuits standing near their broken ship. Taiho pointed to each one. Captain Ji Wusong. She was the leader of their mission, small in size but with a presence that commanded attention. The hologram showed a human female with short black hair and determined eyes. Engineer Donghyun Lee. He could fix almost anything with the most basic tools. This figure was taller, with skilled hands and a thoughtful expression. Security Officer Min Jae Choi. He had been a soldier before joining their space program. A broad-shouldered human male with alert eyes that missed nothing. Communications Specialist Nari Kim. Brilliant with technology and languages. A slim human, with quick movements and clever eyes. And Medical Officer Junho Bai, the one who kept them all alive through what came next. The last figure carried medical equipment and had calm, steady hands. Taiho turned off the hologram. Our first meeting was not friendly. We had just lost our captain and many crew members. We were trained to take control in such situations, especially with lesser species. I ordered my remaining warriors to secure the humans and their ship. One of the council members, a small, fuzzy being with 4 eyes, spoke up. Did the humans resist? Taiho's mouth formed what might have been a smile, though luminary facial expressions were different from human ones. No. Captain Jiwoo assessed the situation quickly. She saw that we outnumbered them, had better weapons, and knew the environment. She ordered her people to cooperate, but she made one thing clear from the start. Taiho paused, remembering. She said, "We will work with you for mutual survival, but we are not your prisoners. We are allies by necessity." At the time, I thought her statement was amusing. What choice did they have? We were superior in every way that mattered. The Krell representative made a rough sound that passed for laughter in their species. Such boldness from a primitive species. What did you do? I allowed her the pretense, Taiho admitted. It seemed harmless. We needed to establish a secure position before the Nexar arrived. Our ship's emergency beacons were active, but rescue would take time. Taiho began to pace slowly as he spoke. We set up a base camp near a rock formation that provided some shelter. Our exo-armor protected us from the toxic atmosphere, but the systems would only last a few days without recharging. The human suits were more primitive but had similar limitations. He stopped pacing and looked up at the council members. The first sign that these humans were different came when we assessed our supplies. We had emergency rations for perhaps 10 days. The humans had their own supplies, which they freely shared. But Captain Jiwoo immediately began organizing search parties to look for water sources and identify potentially edible local plant life. That seems standard procedure, noted Counselor Hunsu. Yes, agreed Taiho, but not the way they did. Our warriors would venture out, collect samples, and return to rest. The toxic atmosphere and high gravity drained our energy quickly, even with exo-armor. But the humans, they kept going. Hour after hour. Taiho's voice took on a note of wonder even 50 cycles later. When I ordered Captain Jiwoo to have her people rest, she explained their rotation system. While some of us rested, they worked. When they finally rested, it was for shorter periods. They pushed themselves in ways that seemed unhealthy, even dangerous. I thought they would collapse from exhaustion. They did not. The hologram activated again, showing humans working tirelessly to set up equipment, gather materials, and build shelters. By the end of the first day, they had mapped the area around our camp, located 3 water sources, and identified several plants that their medical officer thought might be safe after proper treatment. Their engineer, Dong-hyun, was already working with parts from both crashed ships to create a more efficient filtration system for the water. The Grand Speaker leaned forward. This is merely good survival training, Admiral. Many species can show determination when faced with death. Taiho nodded. Of course, but I have not yet come to the unusual part. His voice grew quieter. That came on the first night. The hologram changed to show the darkness of night, with only the glow of emergency lights illuminating a makeshift camp. Shadowy forms moved at the edge of the light. Draox 7 had predators, large ones with natural armor that our standard weapons struggled to penetrate. They hunted by sound and movement, and our crashes had attracted them. The council chamber grew tense as the hologram showed dark shapes moving closer to the camp. We set up a defensive perimeter. 2 of my warriors were on guard duty. The rest of us were resting or working on equipment. The humans were in their shelter. Taiho's eyes grew distant with memory. The attack came suddenly. 3 predators, each the size of a transport vehicle, broke through our perimeter. One of my guards was killed instantly. The other was badly injured. The hologram showed chaos, dark shapes moving fast, weapons firing, shouts of alarm. I led my warriors out to fight. These creatures were fast and strong, their skin deflected. Energy weapons. We had to target their eyes or mouths to do any damage. 2 more of my warriors fell. Taiho touched the scar on his neck again. One creature knocked me down. Its claws cut through my armor like it was nothing. I felt its teeth at my throat. He paused. That's when I heard the noise. A rapid series of explosive sounds. The creature on top of me jerked and roared in pain. The hologram showed a human figure, Minjae, firing a primitive projectile weapon. The bullets weren't powerful enough to pierce the creature's hide, but they hit its eyes, temporarily blinding it. Security Officer Minjae had modified their weapons. He realized that our energy weapons weren't effective, so he created ammunition that exploded on impact. It didn't kill the creatures, but it hurt them and confused them. The hologram showed Captain Jiwoo directing her crew with hand signals. The humans moved with surprising coordination, using the environment against the larger predators. They used sound and light to disorient the creatures. They led them into traps. They worked as a perfect team without needing to speak. Their tactics weren't advanced, but they were creative in ways I had never seen. The scene showed Engineer Donghyun using parts from the ships to create a sonic device that drove the creatures back in pain. When it was over, 3 of my warriors were dead, 2 were injured. I was wounded but able to fight. The humans, none of them died. Medical Officer Junho was injured protecting one of my warriors, but not seriously. Taiho looked around at the council members. Many showed signs of interest now, some leaning forward in their seats. After the attack, I expected the humans to be traumatized. They had just faced alien predators on a hostile world. Instead, they immediately began treating the wounded, not just their own people, but mine as well. Medical Officer Junho worked through the night, using both their medical supplies and ours. Taiho's voice softened. When I asked Captain Jiwoo how they had responded so effectively to a threat they had never seen before, she said something I still remember. Humans have been prey animals for most of our evolution, Admiral. We know what it's like to be hunted. The council chamber was completely silent. The representatives were captivated by the story now. That first night changed how I saw these humans, Taiho continued. They were not what our report suggested. They were not weak or helpless. They were adaptable, resourceful, and surprisingly tough. He looked directly at Counselor Hyunsu, and this was only the beginning of what I learned about humans on that moon. The Grand Speaker tapped his staff gently. Continue your story, Admiral. What happened next? Taiho's scaled face showed a complex emotion. Next, Counselor? Next came the true test of survival. Because on the morning of the second day, our sensors detected Nexar dropships entering the atmosphere. The hunt had begun, and none of us, human or Luminari, expected to survive what was coming. The Galactic Council chamber remained silent as Admiral Taiho continued his story. Many representatives who had seemed bored earlier now leaned forward in their seats. The Nexar dropships landed about 20 kilometers from our position, Taiho said. Our sensors detected 3 ships, each carrying approximately 15 soldiers. They would find us soon. The hologram showed red dots representing Nexar forces spreading out from their landing sites, moving in search patterns. I called a meeting with my remaining warriors and the human group. We had two options: stay and fight, or try to reach higher ground where we might be able to boost our emergency beacon signal. Tejo's expression darkened. Fighting was not a good option. We had lost 3 warriors already. The Nexar would outnumber us more than 2 to 1, and they had come prepared for a hunt, with tracking equipment and heavy weapons. A representative from a gaseous species floated forward slightly. What did the humans suggest? Did they understand the danger? They understood perfectly, Tejo replied. Captain Jiwoo asked detailed questions about Nexar tactics, weapons, and sensory abilities. Then she recommended we move to higher ground, but not for the reason I suggested. The council members exchanged curious glances. She pointed out that the crashed ships were obvious targets. The Nexar would go there first. If we stayed, we would be trapped. If we ran directly to high ground, we would be in open terrain, easy to spot. Instead, she suggested we head toward a canyon system she had spotted on their ship's scans before the crash. The hologram showed a map of rugged terrain with deep cuts in the land. The canyon would offer cover and multiple paths. It would make tracking harder. The walls might block some of their scanning equipment, and at the far end there were mountains where we could boost the signal if needed. Tejo nodded slowly. It was good tactical thinking. We gathered what supplies we could carry and moved out immediately. The hologram showed the mixed group of Luminari and humans traveling across the harsh landscape. The sky was the color of old blood. The ground was cracked and dry. The air was toxic. The gravity was heavy. 2 of my warriors were injured. We had to move carefully to avoid detection. It was difficult. Tejo paused, looking at the council members. This is where I first witnessed the true endurance of humans. The Grand Speaker tilted his head. Please explain, Admiral. My warriors are strong, Tejo said with pride. Luminari are known for our physical capabilities. Our bodies are built for combat. Our scales provide protection. Our muscles are dense. We train from childhood to push beyond our limits. He looked down at his scaled hands. Yet after 6 hours of travel in that environment, my warriors needed rest. Our exo-armor helps with toxic atmospheres, but the filters were working constantly. The high gravity strained our systems. We were burning energy quickly. The hologram showed Luminari warriors sitting against rocks, clearly exhausted. The humans kept going. The image shifted to show the 5 humans still moving, checking the surroundings, gathering samples of plants, testing the soil. Their suits were simpler than ours. They had no advanced exosupport systems. The gravity affected them too. I could see it in their movements, but they did not stop. Councillor Hyunsu spoke up. Perhaps they were simply afraid to rest in a dangerous situation. That's what I thought at first, Tejo admitted. But then I observed them more closely. They were tired, yes. They felt the strain. But they had reserves we did not have. The hologram showed Medical Officer Junho checking on an injured Luminari warrior while clearly tired himself. When I finally ordered a rest period, Captain Jiwoo agreed. But she and Engineer Dongyun remained active, setting up a perimeter with sensors made from parts they had carried from the ship. Tejo shook his head in what seemed like wonder. I asked her when they would rest. She said they would take turns. 3 would rest while 2 kept watch. Then they would switch. That seems logical, said a representative from a 6-limbed species. Yes, but what wasn't logical was how little rest they needed, Tejo replied. My warriors required at least 6 hours to recover enough strength to continue. The humans rested for 2 hours, then got up and were ready to move again. The council chamber filled with surprised murmurs. I refuse to continue so soon, Tejo said. I told Captain Jiwoo we needed more time. She accepted this but suggested the humans scout ahead while we rested. I agreed, thinking they would return quickly. The hologram showed 3 humans, Jiwoo, Minjae, and Nari, moving away from the camp into the canyon. They covered 8 kilometers of difficult terrain. They mapped 3 possible routes. They set up small sensors to warn of approaching Nexar, and they returned just as my warriors were ready to move again. Taiho looked around the chamber. They had been active for nearly 20 hours straight at this point, with only brief periods of rest in hostile conditions, and they were still functioning effectively. A representative from a species known for their physical prowess spoke up. How is this possible? Their muscles should have failed from fatigue. That was my question too. Taiho nodded. During our journey over the next days, I asked Medical Officer Junho about this. His explanation was surprising. The hologram showed a conversation between Taiho and Junho as they walked. He told me that humans evolved as persistence hunters on their homeworld. Before they had advanced weapons, they would chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Not because they were faster, but because they could keep going longer. The council chamber was completely silent now. Humans, Taiho continued, can process heat better than many species through something called sweating. They can keep moving while partially resting their muscles. They can go without sleep for days when necessary. Their bodies are inefficient, in many ways, but that inefficiency created endurance. The hologram changed to show the group reaching the far end of the canyon on the third day. The Nexar forces were visible in the distance, still searching. We had traveled nearly 40 kilometers through difficult terrain. My warriors were exhausted, pushing the limits of our endurance. The humans were tired too. I don't want to suggest they were not affected, but they were still functional. The image showed Engineer Dongyun immediately starting work on the emergency beacon while the others set up a defensive position. That night, the Nexar located our position. They would reach us by morning. Our beacon was working, but we had no guarantee that rescue would arrive in time. Taiho's voice grew quieter. One of my injured warriors could no longer walk. His name was Setak, a young officer on his first deep space assignment. Moving him had worsened his injuries. Medical Officer Junho had done what he could, but Setak needed proper medical facilities. The hologram showed the injured luminary warrior, his scales dull with pain. According to our military protocols, Setak should have been left behind. He knew this. He asked for a weapon so he could cover our escape by drawing the Nexar to him. Taiho looked up, his eyes intense. Captain Jiwoo refused. The council members shifted uncomfortably. She said, "We all leave together, or we all stay and fight." When I explained our protocols, she looked at me with an expression I still remember and said, "That is not how humans do things." The hologram showed what happened next. Captain Jiwoo and Security Officer Minjae created a carrying system using parts of their suits and materials from the surrounding area. Captain Jiwoo carried Setak herself at first, Taiho said, his voice filled with disbelief even after 50 cycles. A human female, less than 2/3 the size of a luminary warrior, carrying a fully grown male in high gravity and toxic atmosphere. The image showed the small human struggling under the weight but moving forward steadily. She carried him for nearly 8 kilometers before Engineer Dongyun completed a better carrying device that distributed the weight among 3 of them. They took turns after that, never leaving Setak behind. Taiho looked around at the council. Representatives. We were being hunted. Every extra minute exposed us to greater danger. Carrying Setak slowed us down significantly, yet the humans never once suggested leaving him. The Grand Speaker leaned forward. "What happened then, Admiral? Did your rescue arrive?" Taiho's mouth formed a grim line. "No. Before any rescue could reach us, we encountered something far worse than we had faced so far." He activated the hologram one final time. It showed the group reaching the base of a mountain range. Behind them, Nexar forces were closing in, and in front of them, the ground began to shake. A volcanic eruption began, triggered by seismic instability in the region. We were caught between the Nexar and a wall of superheated toxic gas and molten rock. The image showed the panic as the ground split open less than a kilometer from their position. "We had nowhere to go," Taiho said quietly. "No safe path, no place to hide. The Nexar were closing in from behind. The eruption was spreading in front and to the sides. It seemed our journey would end there on that toxic moon." He paused, looking at the now captivated council. That's when communications specialist Nari made a discovery that changed everything. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council gleamed under the light of 3 artificial suns. The hall was huge, with tall walls that curved up to meet in a dome high above. The seats rose in circles, filled with beings from 37 different worlds. Some had scales, others had fur. Some had many eyes, others none at all. They spoke in different voices, some high, some low, but all used the same galactic standard language. In the center of the hall stood Admiral Tejo Park. His tall, lean body was covered in pale blue scales that shimmered as he moved. Along his arms and across his face, the scales formed patterns of darker blue, marks of honor from his many battles. His large eyes, with their vertical pupils, scanned the room slowly. The representatives fell quiet as they noticed his attention. Tejo was famous. Everyone knew about the Battle of Crimson Nebula, where he had saved 3 colony worlds from destruction. They had heard tales of the siege of Vexar Prime, where he held out against impossible odds for 60 days. For most younger representatives, he was a living legend, a hero from the stories they had grown up with. Today, he wore his formal military uniform, a deep black material that contrasted with his scales. On his chest were rows of medals and honors. His posture was straight and proud, as was expected of a luminary warrior of his standing. "The Council recognizes Admiral Tejo Park," announced the Grand Speaker, a tall being with 4 arms and golden skin. "Please share your thoughts on today's matter." The matter at hand was simple, or so it seemed. A new species had been discovered, humans from the planet Earth. Reports showed they were relatively primitive. They had only recently developed space travel. Their bodies were soft and vulnerable, with no natural armor or weapons. Their senses were basic. Their technology was far behind most Council races. The Council had gathered to decide how to include these humans in the Galactic Confederation. Most saw it as a routine matter. New species were discovered every few cycles. The humans would be classified as a protected species, given limited technology, and allowed to develop under guidance. This was standard procedure. "Thank you, Grand Speaker," Tejo said. His voice was deep and clear. "I wish to speak about these humans before the Council votes." This caused surprise. Tejo rarely spoke at political meetings. He was a military hero, not a politician. He attended Council sessions when required, but usually remained silent. From the upper rows, Councillor Hyunsu stood. He was also luminary, with scales of green gold. As the diplomatic representative of their species, he often handled such matters. "Admiral Park," Hyunsu said with a slight bow of respect, "the reports on humans are quite thorough. They are physically unimpressive, with limited strength and no natural defenses. Their technology is at least 300 cycles behind current Confederation standards. The classification seems straightforward. A Category 4 developing species requiring protection and guidance." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall. Many representatives were already thinking about the next item on the agenda. This human matter seemed simple. Tejo's gaze swept the room again before he spoke. "Councillor Hyunsu speaks with the wisdom expected of his position. The reports are indeed thorough in their physical assessment of humans." He paused. "But they are dangerously incomplete." The murmurs stopped. The word dangerously was not used lightly in Council proceedings. "What do you mean, Admiral?" asked the Grand Speaker. Tejo stepped forward. The light caught on an old scar that ran across his neck, a rare imperfection in luminary scales that showed the wound had been severe. 50 cycles ago, I encountered humans. This encounter was classified and removed from official records by order of the High Command. The Council chamber erupted in surprised conversations. The Grand Speaker had to strike his staff 3 times on the floor to restore order. "Explain yourself, Admiral," demanded a representative from the Krell Imperium, a species known for their massive size and direct manner. "Why would such an encounter be removed from records?" Tejo nodded respectfully to the Krell. "Because, Representative Morg, what we learned about humans was deemed too sensitive for general knowledge until proper protocols could be established. From his inner pocket, Tejo removed a small device. He placed it on the floor of the chamber. A holographic display appeared above it, showing authentication codes and security clearances of the highest level. "I have received permission from the High Command to share this information today," Tejo explained. "Because the humans have advanced faster than our models predicted. Much faster." The holographic display changed to show a star map. It zoomed in on a small yellow star in an unremarkable part of the galaxy. 50 cycles ago, I was a young combat officer serving on the patrol vessel Sunward Glory. We were mapping the outer regions of Sector 87, near what was then contested space with the Nexar Collective. Images appeared showing a sleek, blue-hulled ship with the distinctive twin engines of Luminari design. We encountered an unknown vessel operating at the edge of our sensor range. It was using a primitive form of faster-than-light travel, producing significant energy signatures. Following protocol for dealing with unclassified species, we moved to intercept. The hologram showed another ship, smaller, with a bulky design that spoke of early space technology. It had Earth markings on its hull. It was a human exploration vessel. They called it the Horizon Seeker. They had no knowledge of the wider galactic community. Their technology was simple but functional. We prepared to escort them to Processing Station 12 for first contact protocols. Tejo's voice grew softer, forcing the representatives to lean forward to hear. That was when everything went wrong. The hologram shifted to show a third ship appearing, larger, with sharp angles and glowing red weapon ports. A Nexar battle cruiser had been tracking us. We didn't know that the Nexar were watching this sector so closely. They attacked without warning. The hologram displayed the battle. Energy beams cutting through space, explosions blooming in silence. Both our ship and the human vessel were damaged. We were forced to crash land on the nearest suitable moon, a hostile world with a toxic atmosphere and dangerous wildlife. The Nexar sent ground forces to eliminate survivors. Tejo waved his hand and the hologram disappeared. He touched the scar on his neck briefly. What happened next is why I stand before you today. What happened next is why I believe we must reconsider how we approach these humans. The council chamber was completely silent now. Even the representatives known for their constant whispering were still, their attention fully on the Admiral. Our group consisted of 12 elite Luminari warriors with advanced exo-armor and weapons. The human survivors numbered only 5. They had limited equipment, primitive weapons, and no experience with alien life or hostile environments. Tejo's eyes seemed to look into the past as he spoke. We thought they would be a burden. We were wrong. Counselor Hyunsu stepped forward. "Admiral, what exactly are you suggesting about these humans?" Tejo looked directly at his fellow Luminari. I am suggesting, Counselor, that classifying humans as a simple Category 4 species would be a grave mistake. One that could have serious consequences for the Confederation in the future." The Grand Speaker leaned forward. "You still haven't told us what happened on that moon, Admiral." Tejo nodded slowly. "No, I haven't. But I will. And after I do, I don't believe anyone in this chamber will look at humans the same way again." He straightened his shoulders, the metals on his chest catching the light. "Let me tell you about Captain Jiwoo Song and her crew, and how they showed me that humans are unlike any species we have ever encountered in this galaxy." The representatives settled into their seats, all thoughts of a quick routine vote forgotten. Admiral Tejo Park, hero of the Confederation, was about to tell his story. And something in his voice told them all that nothing would be the same after he finished.